south of the border, it's a kind of national pastime, searching for conspiracy behind seminal events. Was JFK assassinated by Lee Harvey Oswald or the CIA?
That's one small step for man.
Was the moon landing really a hoax recorded on a Hollywood soundstage? And now the latest in that lineage, the 9/11 Truth Movement. Author and journalist Jonathan Kay.
You know, this is part of the culture of Americans, that our populism in the late 19th century. There's a great tradition within America of ordinary, courageous heroes rising up and speaking truth to power against the elites who control society, whether they're British or whether they're Masons or whether they're bankers.
Others see truthers as products of the divisive Bush era in the White House.
Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists.
At the hearings of the 9/11 Commission, senior counsel John Farmer established the timeline that day. He says by misleading the public to hide incompetence on September 11th, the U.S. government unwittingly triggered the truth movement.
I tell you where I have a degree of empathy, and that is, I think when you have a situation as we had here, where the official government version of what happened doesn't square with reality and leaves people scratching their heads, then people's minds run crazy, and to varying degrees. And I think that's what you have with these some of these more grand theories that somehow they snuck into the Trade Center and planted explosives on different floors. There's absolutely nothing to support that.
We started with this myth about ourselves that we were the exceptional nation. Other nations, the rulers lied and cheated and robbed their people and did all sorts. But not in America, we were the exception.
David Ray Griffin was best known as a theologian until he started to study 9/11.
So I'm very much a Johnny-come-lately to the 9/11 Truth movement.
He says it's understandable that 9/11 Truth has become so very controversial.
If you say that our own leaders not only lied to us, but they actually orchestrated the attacks. So this means it's mass murder on their part. It means it's treason on their part. That's the most serious crime in the modern world, is treason, because our basic religion is nationalism.
Recently named one of 50 influential people in the world by Britain's New Statesman magazine, Griffin is devoted to debunking the official story, like the phone calls on 9/11, reportedly made by passengers and crew from airliners about to crash.
This is Flight 11.
For example, this one from American flight attendant Betty On.
The cockpit's not answering. Somebody's stabbed in business class. And I think there's mace that we can't breathe. I don't know. I think we're getting hijacked.
There were about 15 calls from the 4 planes total that were said to be cell phone calls. And many of the calls that were most important for getting the story in the public mind about these hijackers on the planes were said to be cell phone calls.
But Griffin maintains that cell phone calls from passenger jets are effectively impossible, pointing to the work of a Canadian, Key Dudney, Professor Emeritus of Computer Science at the University of Western Ontario. Dudney's experiments have attracted international attention here on Japanese TV, as well as on the internet.
A, no service on B, no service on C.
He found that in large passenger jets like 757s and 767s, cell connections went from bad to worse.
Usually, by the time you've climbed out to 1,000 feet, you've lost your service signal. That's in a heavy commercial passenger aircraft. So that is the result of far more metal, especially steel in the engines, cutting back the signal and making it impossible. So when that thing gets up to 30,000, I just say, forget it. It can't happen.
And there's general agreement on that. Professor Dudney insists the only conclusion is that the reported 9/11 cell phone calls were faked. And if that's true, he says, it's logical that even the calls from seatback airphones, which do work at altitude, were falsified too.
Hi, baby. Baby, you have to listen to me carefully. I'm on a plane that's been hijacked. I'm on the plane. I'm calling from the plane. I want to tell you I love you. Please.
One of the calls, Cece Lyle saying goodbye to her husband before United 93 crashed in Pennsylvania.
I don't know what to say. There's 3 guys. They've hijacked the plane. I'm trying to be calm.
There are also recordings of chaos in the cockpit as controllers desperately try to reach United 93.
Negative contact, we're looking. We're just answering your call. We did hear that yelling too. Okay, thank you.
And confusion as the plane disappears from radar.
There is now on the United 93, there is a report of black smoke in the last position I gave you, 15 miles south of Johnstown.
From the airplane or from the ground?
They're speculating it's from the aircraft. Who it hit the ground. That's what they're speculating. That's speculation only.
Dudney insists it was all concocted by U.S. intelligence to sell the public on hijackings that didn't exist.
From these calls and these calls alone, we have confirmation, quote unquote, that Arab terrorists wearing red bandanas and shouting religious slogans had taken over the aircraft.
You can hear voices
They said there were
that it would
sounds of
certainly
shouting.
appear to be fearful,
That's
angry.
Right. That's right. It's very easy, of course, to fake a radio message. I can make a radio transmission from anywhere with any kind of sound backdrop, sounds of scuffling. We have control of the plane.
I hope to be able to see your face again, baby.
But what about emotional messages like that from C.C. Lyles on United 93, which her husband has said was unquestionably her?
I love you. Bye.
End of message.
It's a terrific story. It's wonderful, and it helps to carry the claim that, in fact, that plane was hijacked actually by Arab hijackers. But sure, well, I have to say, I'm sorry, but that call was fake too.
How do you know that?
I don't. It has to be, though.
Why does it have to be?
Because the other calls were impossible.
Professor Dudney believes that all of those calls were the product of a sophisticated intelligence gathering operation, targeting passengers, learning personal information about them, then writing scripts to be read by actors through voice replicating computers. But even with the best voice morphing technology, how could actors be expected to know the pet names or intimate expressions necessary to convince friends and family they were actually speaking with their loved ones? That kind of personal communication is something that an actor, even one working for the best intelligence agency, couldn't know.
And they do screw up, and one of them did, calling his mother. Bob Brigham called his mother. He says, "Hello, Mother, this is Bob Brigham."
Actually, it wasn't Bob Brigham, it was Mark Bingham.
Dudney is referring to a passenger on United Flight 93, Mark Bingham, whose mother said he called her and described the hijacking.
Mark Bingham, whatever. Yeah, right. That's right. "Hello, Mother, this is Mark Bingham." Oh, okay. Now, does he usually say that to his mother? Probably not.
According to Dudney, it was a slip-up and clear proof the call wasn't from her son.
Have you been in touch with his mother?
No.
Her name's Alice Hoagland. And she says, in fact, that was one of the things that they would do on the phone. Just kidding. Because he was the up-and-coming young businessman.
Yeah,
and when he called her, she says, that's the way he sometimes introduced himself.
Well, then that just means that they've done a better job.
But here, too, there are unanswered questions. For instance, what's perhaps the most famous call that day? From television commentator Barbara Olson on board American Flight 77, headed to the Pentagon, to her husband Ted Olson, then Solicitor General of the U.S.
He told CNN that she had called him that morning from Flight 77, called him twice, talked to him for about a minute each time. He was uncertain whether it was cell phone or seatback phone. He went back and forth. But he said she reported that there were hijackers on the planes and they were armed with knives and box cutters. The only reported call that mentioned box cutters. So that shows you how important these calls from Barbara Olson were, because everybody knows the hijackers had box cutters.
But that's another of those unresolved issues. Ted Olson told the FBI his wife phoned twice that morning, calls lasting about a minute apiece. But in a 9/11 court case, FBI evidence was that Barbara Olson attempted just one phone call from Flight 77, which lasted 0 seconds.
You've only got two choices. Either Ted Olson was duped by fake calls, or he just made it up. He lied. Either way, the official story is based on a lie. And thus far, we have been unable to get a single newspaper or magazine or TV station in the United States to report this, which the FBI reported in 2006.
So assume all of those alternative theories are true. The World Trade Center towers were brought down by controlled demolition. The Pentagon was hit not by a plane, but a missile or a bomb. United Airlines Flight 93 was shot down by the U.S. military. What would all of that really mean? How many people did it all involve? And how could such a necessarily vast conspiracy be kept secret for so long? They're questions the truth movement finds much more difficult to answer.